So Render was one that David highlighted before with the GPU computing, and it is one of my bigger bull run bag holdings as well. I'm just really impressed with that. And actually, over the last week, it's kind of moved from, what was it? I was looking this morning, $8 to $11.50 or something like that already, just in the last 7 days. So great news that you were kind of speculating on, but just good information to have. And so what we're looking at here is Render wrapped ETH. This is on the 0.3% fee tier on Uniswap. And it's going to be on the Polygon chain there. And what we're seeing is that Render, and it's highlighted right there, is making a big move to the upside there. And so I actually looked this morning too, David, so just full, transparency and honesty and stuff. And the correlation of Render and wrapped ETH has started to break apart because of this big move that Render is seeing to the upside. So although volume looks great, we just understand that the correlation of these two assets is starting to break down. And I think it's a good point to bring up too, David, that these things are living and breathing, right? It's you can look at one thing one day and you look a week later and things they change, they're different. It's living and breathing, it's moving, it's constantly fluctuating. So just understand that this does look like a good opportunity. However, be aware of that correlation. Is it something that you're okay with, of having Render moving to the upside, which maybe will convert you into wrapped ETH? Are you okay with holding wrapped ETH? Are you okay getting converted out of Render potentially as it keeps moving to the upside? So just something to take into consideration when you're looking at these pools, that it's a great place to start your research. And maybe you look at other Render pools, or maybe you look at other wrapped ETH pools. But this one did highlight to us based on the metrics that we have here. So any other thoughts on that, David?
Oh yeah. So one thing that I'm always watching, you guys and gals in the live call with us today, is I'm always taking a look to see, hey, how is this asset performing against Bitcoin? Because if it's not outperforming Bitcoin, especially year to date, then you really, what's the benefit of holding an asset that isn't outperforming the lowest risk asset? So I think that Bitcoin is the lowest risk crypto asset, and I want to be holding and be in pools with assets that are outperforming BTC on a relative basis. And so what I see here with Render, especially year to date, is nice outperformance. So when you see Render moving higher against its Bitcoin pair, that is a good indication of relative outperformance. And so that is something that is very important for me to just check in on before I enter a pool is, hey, is this asset outperforming BTC? If so, great, that looks good. And Colin, what you were mentioning about the correlation, what I've noticed is that in these Render pools, whenever Render really starts to make a run to the upside, it diverges from most other assets, whether that be ETH or Solana. Render, when it moves, it really starts to be in a universe of its own, so to speak here. But there are plenty of options here. You could enter Render wrapped ETH at the 1% fee tier, plenty of volume there. You could enter at the 0.3% fee tier, quite a bit of volume there. Or if you wanted to just enter with USDC, Render USDC, not enough volume here though, you guys. So take a look at that, and not enough TVL. Now this is the 1% fee tier pool here, but there are lots of options, and it doesn't have to be on Polygon. You could enter Render wrapped ETH on mainnet. You could enter Render USDC on mainnet, or you could take a look at Render Sol on Orca, or even Render USDC on Orca. That's on the Solana network. So there are many, many opportunities for pools that contain Render out there. And as Render moves to the upside and starts to generate a ton of swap volume, that's where we see our elevated yields. So I really like Render as a project. It's just, you really need to be in position and catch as much of these pumps to the upside as you possibly can, which can be challenging. But as long as you're actively watching, your favorite assets, then you've got a good chance of being able to catch a move to the upside like this. So, Colin, what do you think of this yield though in this pool? Pretty nice, huh?
Yeah, the yield is great. The one thing that I just want to keep highlighting is the range, right? If things are becoming, decoupled or divergent, it will move. That price will move in the thing. So just be aware of the range that you're setting. The range that's set here is a nice juicy, 20% a month. I love 20% a month. For me, I like being in range. So we all have different strategies and different ways that we play this. For me though, I might even just potentially widen that a little bit and make it like, 8 to 12%. And I would love to have exposure to wrapped ETH render at a 10 to 12% clip with a wider range, because for me, I don't like being glued to my computer. But for other people who are maybe more actively managing this thing, I think it's a great potential opportunity. Absolutely.
Yeah, Colin, I would, if I was going to enter render wrapped ETH on Polygon or on mainnet, what I would be doing, number one, is watching the chart of render wrapped ETH just to make sure that I'm getting a good entry. And then number two, I would make sure that I'm entering at the right fee tier so that I can set a much wider range, because this for me is quite narrow and would require active management. So I would prefer to have a pool that is a little bit more hands-off. And the way that you can achieve that is by selecting the correct fee tier on the correct chain, and by setting a range that is slightly wider so that you don't have to worry about rebalancing so frequently.
Absolutely. This next one here, fetch BM